Once more the number.
1036045.
Okay, hopefully many of you can respond and participate in the survey. It will be fun, and then we'll share the results at the end. Okay, I'm going to go quickly over the first slide because we all know about climate change and it's really going to impact on Africa. And so my task is to set the scene for the next 4 speakers after me, who will tell you the whole story of what we need to do to redesign crops to win the race between climate change and food security. So this is one recent publication showing what's likely to happen in Africa under a 1.5 degree or a 2 degree increased global temperature scenario. If we focus on the reddest maps of Africa on the right-hand side, that's the 2 degrees. Under the bottom row is the minimum temperatures, above are the maximum, and all that I need you to see is that it's pretty much red. So it is going to get hotter. I don't think anybody questions that. What was a little surprising to me on the maps on the right-hand side, there's a strip across the Sahelian and northern Central Africa, which is actually forecast to become wetter under the 2 degree C increase in particular. So it's going to get hotter, which means we expect yield decrease, and it's going to get somewhat wetter, which maybe offers opportunities for farming. What opportunities might change, or what might change? So this is an example from 4 different regions of Indonesia, but it could be 4 countries in West Africa. And what you see is along the bottom of each of those panels, the cropping system that was happening at the time of this paper, which is about 2010, if I remember correctly. You see maize chilies, maize cassava. In a different region, it's maize tobacco or maize fallow. It might be maize cotton, maize rice. But you can imagine if it gets wetter, if the season gets longer, then you might actually want to put a different crop. Or you might be able to put 3 crops. Or where you had 1, you can now put 2. Or you can change the relay system that you're going to be using. And to do this, the varieties might need somewhat different traits. You might be planting them when it's wetter, so you need tolerance to a wet seedbed. Or it might be hotter during early crop instead of late crop. So we might need slightly different varieties. So we did a survey, and I wondered, did anyone here respond to the survey? There were 600 scientists in Africa that responded to a survey that we recently published in Molecular Plant. And you can see on this graph on the table the numbers of respondents for 6 different crops. And we asked many questions, but one of them was, what's going to change? What are going to be the drivers of change? And what is most likely to be adopted in future in terms of agronomic drivers of change? And I've underlined some of the major ones. Mechanization. Everybody expects there will be more mechanization for these crops. It's groundnut and pearl millet in this example. There will be early sowing to be able to exploit the full potential of crops. More use of crop rotations and conservation agriculture. Intensifying cropping systems, either by intercropping or relay cropping, were common to almost all 6 of these crops. So these are pictures from Kano just about 6 weeks ago. These are farmers' fields. You can see different intercrops. This first speaker this morning, I love that presentation. He talked about intercropping is messy. It doesn't look perfect. Here you see there's at least 5 different crops in that picture on the top right, intercropped in that field near Kano. And the field on the bottom actually was pearl millet with cowpea, and the pearl millet has already been harvested, so all you see remaining in the field is cowpea. So if the season changes, they might change the rotations, they might change the planting dates of the intercrops or the relay crops. So interesting, in our research, we went back and found a paper that explains what are breeders doing today. So some of us, most of us are breeders. This was a survey in 19 developing countries. What are you doing today in the face of climate change? And the long story ends in that one summary statement. In summary, recent years have witnessed an increase in the urgency with which breeders are working on the same traits that they were already working on, yield and drought and early maturity, but really nothing has changed except they're learning how to do it faster and better. That's a good thing, right? We like that, but they haven't really changed anything. And My grandfather used to say a definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing and expect a different result. So if climate is changing and we need something different, we better not just keep doing the same thing, or we better be very sure that that's what we need to be doing. So here's the only great example I've seen so far. This is my friend Osman Bukhar at IITA, his research fields near Kano, and he's actually evaluating cowpea genotypes. The bottom, well, both of these are about 40 different cowpea genotypes. They're being grown in an intercrop to see which one does best in the intercrop. Now, it doesn't look very much like the farmer's field, because the farmer's field is chaotic, but nonetheless, this is an attempt. And we need you to help us do better, but at least it's a start. How else are we doing it? Well, we are recognizing that this is no longer the job of a breeder by herself. This is a job of a breeder along with a physiologist, along with a soil chemist, along with a food nutritionist, along with soils and animal livestock. And so we are working, we being the Dryland Crops Network, and we have a network in Western Africa, we have a network in Eastern and Southern Africa. You can see an example here of the colleagues from various countries. You can see the example from Eastern and Southern Africa on the table here. They are sitting together to co-design the product profiles, to divide the labor. We will work on product profile 1, and Malawi will work on product profile 2, and Tanzania on product profile 3, and then we'll share testing locations and we'll share results. So there's a co-development, a co-implementation, and a co-ownership of the breeding or improvement networks. So we have two main hypotheses that the next 4 speakers are going to elaborate for you. The first hypothesis is that we're going to, each of us as breeders, need to think beyond our favorite crop. So I've been a maize breeder all my life. I care about maize, and maize has to be just so. Well, that's no longer going to be the paradigm. Instead, we're going to require transdisciplinary teams that are ready to tackle the G by E by M. When I put maize into a relay with pigeon pea, intercrop that becomes a relay, what has to be different about that maize variety or that pigeon pea variety? It can tolerate shade, it can tolerate competition early on, it can actually benefit from the microbiome. Great presentation this morning also about the microbiome, which is maybe something we need to give a lot more thought to how we use it. And the second hypothesis is that crop varieties for new or modified systems will require different traits than today's varieties. So we're going to have to think about what traits are needed. One caution, this is also near Kano. I saw this truck full of stalks, and I asked the Sanusi, Dr. Sanusi, who was with me, what are they doing with those stalks? He said, those are super valuable. Every stalk is worth US 10 cents because the burning of that stalk of the sorghum produces the perfect temperature to cook this bread, which is gurasa, and it's very much a favorite, and so we need to use those stalks for something else. So this just tells us that we can't forget local context and the socioeconomists in our teams. With that, I want to thank the co-authors of this paper and especially thank probably many of you who participated in this survey. And I'll hand it back over to Claire.
Okay, thanks, Yes, please have a seat there. So the next 4 presenters, I'm going to call all of you to come and sit here so we can save time in moving up and down. So I'll call Vimbaya Grace Petrova Chimonyo, who is a cropping systems agronomist at CIMIT Zimbabwe. Are you around? Yes, you're welcome. Please have a seat. Sit, then you will speak after. Then I'll invite Mariam Abba Daudi, Lake Chad Research Institute, Nigeria. And then in place of Godfrey Asea, he was unfortunately not able to be here, we'll have Harish Gandhi, who is a breeding lead of dryland crops at CIMIT. Then last, we shall have Edward Mati, who is an agriculture and applied economist at CISA, Savannah Agricultural Research Institute in Ghana. Okay, so next, please, Vimbaya Grace, please come and make your talk.
Yes.
So the topic is going to be on cropping systems
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and I hope you had a beautiful lunch. My name is Vimbai Grace Petrova Chimonyo, and my topic is going to be cropping systems for resilience to climate change, opportunities and challenges. This slide is just a filler. I think we are more than aware of the issues that sub-Saharan Africa is facing in terms of the food systems. We've got poor resource use and management, economic instability, market fragmentation, we've got trade-offs in production systems, increased protein hunger, increased land degradation. And our challenge right now is how do we come up with agricultural systems that actually work, more so to address the challenges of climate change. Okay. So, well, unfortunately, we did not upload the most recent presentation but I'll try and work with what I have. So, within the conversations that we're having, we're talking about how do we strengthen cropping systems. And for me, when I talk about cropping system, I'm talking about people, place, and plant. So we're talking about the practices, growing them, encompassing all the sequencing that is required over space and time. And I did a small little research on my own to see what has been the rhetoric over the years around cropping systems. So from the 1990s to the early 2000s, research was mostly about yield and soil fertility issues. Publications have just started talking about mixed cropping systems, but this was specific for soil fertility and increased yields. So we look at probably around 2010 all the way to 2016, just before the economic crisis and also just before COVID. You find there was a shift to integration to talk about, okay, fine, what are the legumes in the systems doing? What are the trees in the systems doing? Also, there was also a shift to farmer-centric type research within cropping systems. Then we moved to early 2016 just after the price increase for crude oil and maize and sorghum, and we saw that people were now moving into more of systems thinking research. People were talking about how do we complexify the system so that they actually exemplify nature. So you find a lot of research that we've been doing and what many of you have actually been contributing to is more of that higher level thinking of cropping systems. So at the end of the day, we know that in these cropping systems, we are now talking about things like agroecology, we're talking about climate-smart agriculture, we're talking about nature-positive type systems. So this is where we now are. We have moved to a more simplistic way of looking at cropping systems to a more complex way of thinking about what systems should be. And in that thinking, we know that climate change has been a topical issue. But what have been the impacts of climate change on our agricultural systems? The picture on my left is telling me that at the end of the day, climates are becoming warmer. Warming up climates means that there are opportunities for some regions, but not all regions. As Kevin also highlighted, that there's a whole tract of land and regions in Africa where it's going to get warmer. We know that in places where the winters were too cold, greenhouse production is going to be spared from expansive use of energy. But we also know that in some areas, issues of water is going to be more than typical and topical. And we know that climate change, in many people, it's about water crisis. And we've added also issues of heat stress. We know that climate change is also going to affect issues of food, nutrition, concentration, and bioavailability. And a lot of anti-nutritional aspects are going to be quite topical. What we don't talk about are the synergies that are actually there within the resources that are utilized in these cropping systems, and more importantly, the water, energy, and food nexus that in many aspects we speak to, but that is indirectly within these systems. So what have been some of the things that we've observed in existing cropping systems? So you know that extreme weather and climate is tilting the balance of existing systems. There is a shift more from people looking at crops as a form of livelihood to people actually adopting more livestock-oriented production systems. But what do we then do to fortify these particular systems? We have got a re-evaluation, redesigning of the systems to say, instead of then letting go a lot of these production systems, why not incorporate dual-purpose crops like sorghum that can actually act as food, fuel, and fodder? We also have us looking at the systems more from this perspective of the farmer. A lot of the research that we've been doing has been often top-down, and in many instances where we do come up and talk to farmers, it is more of a validation of what we want them or what we want to impose on them. So trying to prioritize farmer objectives, especially production objectives, is something that we need to actually do within redesigning this cropping system. This creates relevance in the work that we're doing. This creates ownership of the processes and the products that we have, and trust. I think it's something that hasn't been mentioned in this conference so far. Trust between us as researchers and the people that we're supposed to be benefiting from our initiatives. And also, it addresses the issues of sustainability. There's one thing that has been mentioned by Kevin and also has been saliently mentioned by several speakers during this conference, is the issue of mechanization. We are pursuing cropping systems that can allow and accommodate mechanization. One would talk about mechanization being something that's a bit too far-fetched for our smallholder farmers. But let's look at it this way. Our farmers right now in sub-Saharan Africa are an aging population. That's number one. Number two, cities and towns seem to be more lucrative for the younger communities, and therefore there is this massive drain of labor that's required to farm a lot of these systems that we have. So in Summit, we have actually come up with trying to address the issues of labor constraints by looking at appropriate scale mechanization to reduce the drudgery that is purported under a lot of these new production systems that we are championing within sub-Saharan Africa. So a lot of these new crops and these new systems are very labor intensive. And mechanization is actually, this small scale mechanization, it's of low cost, it's got high returns to investment, and it's got a very low carbon footprint. So when we're coming up with these new cropping systems, let us not remove mechanization from the table, because at the end of the day, there is something appropriate for the advancement of the systems. And we talk about underutilized crop species, and we seem to be quite shy about talking about these quite broadly when we talk to maize breeders, wheat breeders, soybean breeders. There is definitely a need for a paradigm shift so that we don't over-rely on these major crops. We need to also diversify and strengthen food networks and sovereignty. So one of the ways we can do this is by engaging and also embracing underutilized crop species. They can support the climate health core benefits. They can support climate environment, and they can also support climate and socioeconomic benefits by the high adaptability that reduces likelihood of crop failures, which can also contribute to sustainable market production. So in a way, they actually open up new value chains, and these new value chains can actually help strengthen the existing food systems that are on the ground. Then one thing that has been mentioned by earlier speakers, especially in the morning, is about how these cropping systems can actually improve soil health. We've got issues of soil erosion, low soil carbon. We have issues of low phosphorus in our systems. So we've got cropping systems that actually can improve some of these negative aspects of our predecessor systems. So, for instance, intercropping and rotations, cropping systems that embrace crops that have got deeper rooting systems, crops that actually can mediate better soil organic metamineralization. Then in the morning, we had a speaker that spoke about the soil microbial plant complex and how a lot of these new crops that are actually there within the systems can actually improve the soil biota. Deep-rooted crops that can then better sequester phosphorus and also can help in exploration of greater depths for improved soil fertility. So a lot of these issues that I have addressed are underlined by a better cooperation, better disciplinary efforts across animal economics. Everyone who, at the end of the day, wants to see a better smallholder system for improved food security. We cannot do it alone. I am happy to say that people that are in the social science sector, animal scientists, water management experts are now welcome to the table and to the conversation of improved cropping systems. But over and above this, there are issues of gender, social inclusion, issues of equity that we still need to address. And talking to plant breeders, saying develop varieties that are best suited for the people, the place, is something that we need to continue having in terms of conversation and dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vimbaya. Please hold the questions for her you ask later, and I think she's given us some perspectives on breeding within the context of the farmer. So please hold the questions. We'll have a round at the end. So next, we will have the breeding, crop breeding for cereals, legumes, and inter-relay cropping, future essential traits for breeding. I think that is Mariam Abba. You're welcome.
How do I push it? How do I push it? This one, okay. All right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I will talk about the breeding aspect of our publication, the survey. And that is cereals, legumes, and intercropping or relay cropping, future essential traits for breeding. Why are we concerned about future traits? It's because of the daunting effect of climate change. We all know climate change is real. So if we were to tackle climate change, then we have to change our breeding objectives. We can't continue to do the same thing and then think of getting a different answer to that, just like Kevin said earlier. So let's just have a look at this field where this crop is trying to give us food. It's grown in this harsh environment. You can see drought here, heat stress, disease and pests, and so many other factors affecting it, but it's still trying to give us something to eat. Then are we going to fold our hands to just wait for it like this to give us something to eat? No, we have to do something. We have to change the way we do our breeding. And we cannot do this alone. Breeders cannot do this alone. We have to do it as a group. The scientists, the experts in every crop have to wake up and then change the way we do our breeding. Recent findings shows that impact on climate change on yield tends to be negative. minus 17% for overall crops by 2050, minus 6% for major staple crops in West Africa, and minus 10 to 15% for maize in Africa. And most of these are C4 crops. If C4 crops can suffer this yield loss, then what are we thinking about C3 crops? If C4 crops then can at least try to give us yield in this harsh environment, can suffer this. Because even 1% yield loss is very, very important. We have to try to stop that. If we allow this to continue, we will go hungry. Already people are hungry and will continue to go hungry. So from our survey, we worked on the dryland crops. So most of these dryland crops are pale millet, sorghum, chickpea, cowpea, and then there's a few among them. And we know that most of these, the cowpea and the chickpea are sources of essential nutrients, dietary fiber, while the carbohydrate, the pale millet and then the sorghum are sources of calories. They are very important. They are our staple crops. They are our staple crops, but climate change, climate effect doesn't care about that. It's affecting it. These crops are growing under harsh environment. And that is what we rely on for survival. So we need to save these crops. So this is a survey. I like this. I copied from Kevin. It's still the same story. Breeders were surveyed, and breeders in 19 developing countries were asked if they know about climate change. If yes, what are they doing about it? They said, yeah, we know about it. And then we're intensifying our breeding. We are intensifying what we have been doing. And those things are pest and disease resistance, drought tolerance, short growth cycles. Yes, they are good for climate change. But when we had our survey, we came to realize that there are more than this. And they said, yes, we know about, and this is what we are doing, and they will continue to intensify what we are doing. And yet they're expecting change. No change will come with this. Just a kind of a baseline. We have product profiles for pale millet, sorghum, maize, groundnut, cowpea, and then bean for breeding programs in sub-Saharan Africa. And our primary focus is on increasing grain yield under biotic and abiotic stresses. And then we conducted this survey. Kevin went through this in the morning. I don't have to go through it again. I'm a bit gender biased. We have 20% women in the respondent profile. And then most of them are Africans. So they are from Africa. And then if we are to solve our problem, there is one saying in my language that it's only the woman knows where it's leaking in her room. That means only you can solve your problem. Nobody will come from somewhere else to do it for you. They can only assist you, but only we can solve our problem. So to sustainably win the race between climate change and food security, there may be the need for realignment in the breeding targets. That is what we found in our survey. And these are the two cars, this race between climate change and food security. I'm sure we are the one in the front, the blue. You will win. So from our survey, this is what we found. And this survey is on these 6 crops: pale millet, sorghum, maize, groundnut, cowpea, and then bean. And then these are the traits that came up from the almost 600 respondents. And there are so many traits. The first 2, stay green and nutritional enhancement for pale millet, are the one that we discussed in our paper, while the remaining 3 were just mentioned because there is no space to discuss all these traits. So we picked 2 for every crop, and then we discuss it in the paper. And then as authors, we also thought there are some traits that are really important, but the respondent did not bring it out. For example, for pale millet, we brought out bird resistance. And then let me give another example so that I shouldn't be biased. I'm a pale millet breeder. Let me go to legume also for cowpea, early maturity, emerging pests and diseases. And the blind spot here, the authors thought is important, but it's not, the respondent did not bring it out. It's a root architecture. That is the trait that is related to that. And we know that stay green in pale millet sustained photosynthetic activity during terminal drought, contributing to grain filling and yield. And also stay green is a good trait for dual-purpose pale millet. If we want to come up with a dual-purpose pale millet, which can give us food and then feed for animals, then it's a good trait. And then also for nutritional enhancement, biofortification, there are so many methods if we want to do nutritional enhancement. That's diet for diversification, food fortification, nutrient supplementation, biofortification, but most of those are kind of beyond the reach of the common man. But biofortification is okay because we improve the crop. For example, we released biofortified millet this year, 2023, pearl millet, which is having high iron and zinc in Nigeria. And also bud resistance is an important trait. This year, in my institute, we do a kind of participated variety selection every year before, just towards harvesting millet. And then we do that together with farmers, seed aggregators, the consumers, seed companies around. So we do that together with them to assist us in selecting the material to take it to the next step. To my surprise, this year, what came first when we had the pairwise ranking was resistance to bud. All the previous years, you maybe get resistance to striga or maybe tolerance to drought, yield, something like that. But this year is resistance to drought, to birds that came first in the ranking. So that means their preferences also changes. And then why is it changing? It's because of the climate. It wasn't a problem before, like now, but this year it is a problem. So it's one of the blind spots that we identified in pearl millet, and that's bud resistance. And then how we do that, how do we breed for that, is in pearl millet, we look for the dense panicles with long bristles. That's how we do it in pearl millet, and that's not restricted to that. We also have other methods, like the high tannin in sorghum. The high tannin in sorghum at early stage is a bit bitter, so the birds will not like to attack the sorghum at that stage. And then when it's ripe, when it's about to harvest, the tannin kind of disappear. It doesn't become that bitter again, which is good for consumption at that time. So this is another method of breeding for bud resistance. And also for cowpea, we can see these cycles. The first one, essentially early maturity, is one of the essential traits that we identified in our survey, that if we want to breed for a variety, cowpea variety, that is going to resist this climate effect, then it should be early maturing, and then for resistance to emergent pests and diseases also, because most of the pests and diseases that were not a problem before, years back, are now becoming a threat. I've given some examples here. I said aphid biotypes have overcome resistance in improved cowpea, and leaf thrips now pose a serious threat in Nigeria. And there's also the emergence of scab disease in Uganda. This was a report in 2010, but now it's become a serious threat in Uganda. And then the blind spot that we found in our report is some root architecture. By breeding for this root architecture is a blanket approach. When you do that, take care of the root architecture, you can breed for drought tolerance or water use efficiency, phosphorus use efficiency, or nitrogen use efficiency. All these are root root traits that if you breed for these, you can breed for the others. Apart from that, we also look at the drivers of change in agronomy or cropping systems, and also the likelihood of adoption of crop management innovations. To my left is the drivers, where there are a list of drivers of change in agronomy or cropping systems, and it's been scaled from 1, not important, to 5, very important. And then now I'm just going to talk about 3 that are having the very important points, kind of 5. So the first one is increased frequency of drought. With increased frequency of drought, it will really push us to look for traits that can really fit into agronomy and cropping system. It's a driver for us to really work. It's a problem. And then the second one is increased demand due to population growth. Population is growing, land is not growing, climate effect is hammering us, so it's a kind of pushing us to really look for the best way out. And then the third one is increased climate variability and extreme events, just like in that picture. So it's also a driver of change. We have to change our cropping system or the agronomy for us to tackle this. And to my right is the likelihood of adoption, crop management innovation adoption. And as the first speaker, my friend, spoke about is mechanization. Mechanization, we have to be mechanized now. If we really want to go fast, we have to be mechanized. And then intensification of cropping system, either by intercropping, relay cropping, or double cropping, we have to intensify our cropping system. In a single land, as a farmer, I should have my pearl millet, I should have my sorghum, my cowpea, my groundnut. I can all do that It depends on how I do it. So that's where we come in as scientists. How should they do it for them to get the optimum? Okay, yeah, the optimum use of that, benefit of that. And then conservation, agriculture, crop rotation, increased planting density, these are all likelihood of adoption. Yeah, these are some of the intercropping here. This is in Nigeria, the other one is in Senegal. This is what we did as a Pale Millet Working Group, kind of our effort. I just want to show our effort so far and how to tackle. We have started something we have been doing, but this is a new approach. We want to start coming up with hybrids, and to do that, we need parents. So as a Pale Millet Working Group, we came up, and then we all contributed with lines from our different projects, and then we are working on it now to look at the heterotic pool of these Pale Millet lines to look for good parents that can suit into this climate. So this is my conclusion. She's waiting for me, and then I leave you with this.
Thank you so much, Maria. I'm sorry I had to stop you, but at least you had concluded, and I think it was clear. Thank you so much. She's been speaking about the drivers for breeding, where we need to be focusing in the face of climate change. So now we are going to move to another topic that's related, but really looking at the technologies. So I would like to invite Dr. Harish on modern technologies to use genetic diversity and enhanced breeding and mining, gene editing, genomics-assisted breeding. Welcome.
Right. Thank you, Claire. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Great, everyone is here. So I learned today morning that I have to make this presentation, so I'm going to try my best to do a good job and represent Godfrey as much as I can. So I think this is the next, right? Okay. So basically, I think what you heard from all the speakers, that we have to win the race against climate change. I think starting with Kevin's presentation and later on with Wimbai's presentation, that cropping systems are quite critical. And I think Mariam also highlighted some of the other traits, such as bird resistance, nitrogen use efficiency, the phosphorus use efficiencies. So I think the breeder are always in this puzzle, how to now improve these traits. And, they have faced with the choices between those four quadrants, you see in front of you. Some of them are very, very technically very difficult, and some of them are technically more easier. So what you see on the red boxes there on your left, basically on the left up QA box, basically, there are varieties or varietal candidates which are within your elite breeding pool, and if you are able to find a material which is adapted and elite, and in those material, if you find the traits of interest, then of course it's a much easier battle to win, and you can just use that material maybe from your neighboring breeding program or shared breeding program. But often that is not the case, and often you have to rely on the sources which are either not very adaptive, not very adapted, or non-competitive, which means they are not being tested in the environment you are breeding for. And the worst one is they are neither adapted or they are non-competitive. So I think essentially we need to optimize the variation to maximize the genetic gain, and that will require us to choose between some of those choices. And you can take a trait, maybe there is a breeding program which is not in Africa, but maybe somewhere else, such as that blue boxes there on the QB, where the material could be in somewhere else in sorghum breeding program. And I think I know an example such as sorghum midge. We know it's a problem in Australia, and it's also a problem in Western Central Africa. So maybe the material from there can come in. And in the event of climate change, those are the material you can probably breed with the material in Africa, as an example. But of course, I think before we can make all of these advances, we need to get the basics right? I think we can do all this breeding, we can use a lot of different tools and methodology, but one of the basics I really urge all of us here in the room as the breeders is to get it right is the application of molecular markers for very routine and lowest hanging fruit of molecular markers is QA/QC. And essentially these markers, which are for most of the crops we are working with these days, are available on the Intertech lab, especially the crops which are supported or part of CGIAR portfolio have the markers in the Intertech lab where you can use them to test the genetic purity of the material. You can identify whether the material you are working with is actually the true material. Often you can make a lot of genetic gains, but when you initiate the crossing program, if the line is not true to type, the line you are using is not the material you have been intended to breed for, then you actually, a lot of your genetic gain, expected genetic gain, sort of goes down because that's not the material you're supposed to use. So in this example, what you see in those boxes is an actual application of 20 molecular markers in that table there. And what you see on the yellow or the orange color there is an actual original source. And what you see, the two sources of the line 1A and line 1B, where the markers can be used to essentially reject or accept, whether the material you have been using is true to type or not. So I think to me, this is first thing, and I urge all the breeders to get this fundamental right in the breeding program. I'm not sure. Okay. So and then once the fundamentals are in place, then we can use various modes, various ways of using genomics and other tools. So I think this is an equation probably has been shown in this conference many, many times. And there are ways you can essentially play with each of that variable in the equation. And there are, of course, trade-offs. But I think one of those two of those which are highlighted there are I think we heard yesterday in the morning from the DG of INERA of Morocco about some of the tools they have been using, such as speed breeding, double haploids in the breeding program. So essentially, if you look at my previous presenters and what they have been talking about, the race against climate change is there. We are already experiencing the climate change. So what we need to really look at is this breeding equation and really ask the question, what are the various ways I can improve my breeding program, I can improve my breeding scheme, so that I'm addressing the traits and the variance I need to bring in my breeding program. So there has been a lot of talks and discussion about use of marker-assisted breeding and genomic selection, but what we need to do is we need to really combine the marker-assisted selection and genomic selection in the breeding program. So even though marker-assisted selection has been worked on since many, many years, but there are very few number of breeding program and very few number of traits for which the markers are actually being used in the program. And I think that is actually a challenge. I mean, even though there has been so much investment has been made in this area, but if you look at its application in the breeding program is quite limited. So in order for us to really make sure the traits which are going to be critical for climate change, we would have to essentially combine both methods of marker-assisted breeding, which is marker-assisted selection and the genomic selection. So the other area, I think people often ask about, how do we really bring in the useful variation from gene bank? I was just reading today, there was a flyer outside from genetic innovation team of CGIAR. There are at least about 500,000 samples in a various gene bank all around the world for many different crops. So how do we get that useful variation from those gene bank into addressing some of the traits which are required for climate change, right? So my colleagues at CIMMYT, this is a slide from my colleague Sarah Hearn, and she's working on this allele mining initiative, which is 1CG, multiple institutions across the globe, working together on maize, sorghum, cassava, common bean, rice, and they have been looking at what are different ways we can harness the hidden diversity, which is available in the gene bank in a meaningful way, so that we don't bring in, the genetic load, from those accessions. So essentially, what they have done is in this slide, this is a very innovative approach. This is what they call environmental GWAS. Basically, what you see on that map there is a various environmental variables. So I think in this example is a temperature, which has been used as a variable. So the material which have been collected, let's say take an example of maize, from all of these different locations, have been essentially genotyped and then they have used the environmental variable as a way, as a response variable to map various genomic regions which are going to be required for, for those environments. And in this, they use a similar data to predict what kind of a predicted genotype or a synthetic genotypes will be required using that material as a training panel and identifying the ideal genotypes and asking the question, what material actually exists in our breeding program today to meet that requirement of that novel climate. So this is essentially allowing us to tap the genetic diversity which exists in gene bank in meaningful way, identify the novel variation which exists in gene banks by developing hypotheses which are relevant to a specific climate change question, such as high temperature, high rainfall, or also about low rainfall and other situations. And of course, I think we heard earlier from earlier speakers, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. So essentially, the genome editing and target mutagenesis is, of course, is going to be the most critical tool available. And we heard a really great example and very nice talk today and today morning around microbe and how it sort of made me ask the question, are there any such mutations we can bring in, such as for mycorrhizal community in maize or in sorghum, which would allow us to through genome editing targets. So in conclusion, modern methods and tools will enable, I would say, unprecedented accuracy and speed in harnessing, specific desired traits in the breeding program. Flying, of course, the flying faster and directly is nonstop is great, but of course we need to write a right destination. And the use of low-cost, some of the tools such as QAQC really will ensure us to make sure we're on the right path in our breeding program. So thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Harish, and thank you for keeping the time as well. So we've heard several aspects of really breeding for the future climates. We've heard on cropping systems, we've heard about the traits that are going to be needed with the changing climate, and we've heard about the technology. So now we are going to move to seed systems, and I would like to invite Edward Matif to give a talk on impact pathways, seed systems and value chains for the future.
So speaking on the topic, impact pathways, seed systems, and value chains for the future. Now, there is a big problem. And there is a mortal approach in order for us to solve that particular problem. And what is the problem that as Africa we want to solve? That is the issue of food security and income. But there are different ways of approaching this particular issue. And I believe that is the reason why we are all here today. But there's one fundamental question that we also have to ask ourselves. So in this work that we are doing, who actually are we working for, or who are our main clients? And that is the farmer. So whatever variety of crop that we are producing, there is an end user somewhere. And if there is that end user, we need to understand the person very well. And I have been saying, and pardon me for that, that breeders usually talk to plants most of the time. But for socioeconomists, we talk to people. So sometimes, or not even sometimes, so it is very important for us to work together so that in as much as the breeders talk to the plant, we talk to the farmers, then we all put our information together and see how best we can create that impact. I hope you like what I just said. So within the mind of the farmer, this is what he's thinking about. That are there new seed varieties? Where can we get the seed? Seeds are very expensive, and the seeds are not good. There are so many questions that run through the mind of the farmer. However, we believe that if these issues are actually solved, we can address the issue of low productivity and low income as well as high food insecurity. So the question is, how do we reverse the process? Are we committed, or is it business as usual? So in terms of limited adoption and scaling, we have 4 main hypotheses. And I think Chris is so happy to see this very slide. One, the issue has to do with non-responsive seed value chain. So with the seed or the varieties that we are developing, is this something that actually drives the value chain? So we need to have, a lot of information about what the various actors within the value chain actually require. So if we don't do that, then it means that all the varieties that we are developing will not actually be sustained by the value chain. Then also there is a limited awareness. And the question is, who should create that awareness? Now with the seed, the private seed company, who doesn't have monopoly over the seed, that person will not have the incentive in order to create awareness. So that is also, a major problem, because even if the varieties are there, who creates the awareness for the farmers to know? Then there is also information of, the problem of lack of robust data to actually drive the breeding process. So we really have to be intentional about the data that we collect. And the data that we also collect must also be gender sensitive so that we can breed for the various market segments. Then also poor product, differentiation. And this is an aspect that I think CIMIT and even the CGR is doing a very great job there, been doing a lot of product differentiation and also market segmentation. So there are several proposed, impact approach. So the first one, should we look, deeper insight into farmers' production and dietary constraint? So is it where our focus should be? Or in the context of low input use, resource-poor farmers and challenging environments, should our focus be on solving critical constraints related to productivity, as I've said already? All right. So also, we also have the, so whether we should also prioritize the delivery of genetic and complementary solutions that resolve these constraints. Apart from the varieties that we are talking about, should we rather talk of bundling of inputs? Or we should just only focus on just the variety? So these are some of the things that we have to, think about. Then the aim is to deliver the right varieties that meet farmers' needs at the right time, consistently, affordable, and profitably. This is the surest way that can really incentivize our farmers to actually go for the varieties that we are developing. So we have 5 new approaches. One has to do with impact orientation. So this can be done by co-identification of solution of farmers' problems. So we work together with the farmers to identify what their problems are. Then based on that, we respond to that particular need. Then complementary and bundle approach, as I've already said. Then evidence-supported scaling. So promote proven interventions emerging from rigorous analysis. And that is why data is very, very critical here. We have to be very, very intentional about the type of data that we collect. Then also subsidiarity, should we also consider a situation where deal with the farmer together with the community in order to create that needed impact that we desire. Then inclusive seed system, linking the formal and the informal system, because when you come to, within the African setting, you realize that a lot of the seed is being delivered through the informal seed system. So should there be an integration of the informal and the formal system in order to deliver seed to our farmers? So we want to look at a case study, and I must also highlight the fact that there are several impact pathways, in different countries. But for the sake of this presentation, I want to do that for Ghana, where we consider. So yes, so this is the a schematic diagram of how to create an impact pathway. So first of all, we have a lot of varieties lying on our shelf. And a question I keep on asking breeders is that, should we continue to breed new varieties, whereas we have a lot of varieties, on our shelf? So what can we do in order to move those varieties from the shelf to the farmers? So one way for us to do that is to create awareness of selected, preferred varieties. And this can be done through, data collection for us to know exactly what the preferred traits of the farmers are. And based on that, if we know what the traits are, then we can now go back to the shelf and actually find out the particular variety that responds to the needs of those traits that the farmers actually prefer. If it happens that those traits are not available on the shelf, then it means this is a very critical information that can be passed on to the breeder so that the breeder can incorporate those traits into the new varieties that the breeder is developing. Now, in terms of the business analytic, with regard to the seed delivery system, now based on the awareness that has been created and the preference analysis, and we knowing the very variety that the farmers prefer, then we have to identify the seed delivery system. And for Ghana, one particular seed delivery system that is working, that's the informal seed system, and that has to do with the community seed production, where the breeder provides seed for some of the key farmers within the community so that they multiply the seed. So that is the community entry and sensitization. Before you do that, you need to engage the opinion leaders and also engage opinion leaders so that, they will buy into whatever you are doing, and also community selection of nuclear seed. And the reason why we highlight this particular point is that there are several instances where you provide seed to lead farmers within a particular community, and they multiplying the seed and sharing with their colleagues. They end up not even sharing it with them because they see the seed happens to be very good, so they only want to use it for themselves or even take it outside the community. So the other colleagues will not have the opportunity to do that. So this could be done in a sort of participatory approach where the community members will select the best farmers to multiply the seed and share those seed for them. And if it works, then it means that we need to scale out that particular approach to other communities. And once that is done, then definitely there's going to be, adoption is going to increase because these are farmers who are actually aware and they've actually tested the seed. They've been with the seed for quite a long time, and they can also be a source, of information to others who have not yet even come into contact with those particular varieties. So once we do that, then we can be able to assess our impact based on the adoption level, and also, we can also assess their food, security and income. However, the community seed system is not the only impact pathway. We can also pilot other seed delivery system. And once that also works, then we can also scale it out and do the adoption level and as well as do the impact assessment. So this is one way that we can deliver seed and also create impact within the system. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Let's give a round of applause again to our speakers. And then maybe you can share the results of the survey. I hope you all contributed. Are we able to show?
Now there will be 3 more questions.
Okay. So,
So please open your Slido and 3 more questions will be there.
So Slido, you can go to Google. If not, you can say www.slido.com. Slido is SLIDO.com. Then you fill in that code.
The meeting number is 1036045.
Say that again.
1036045.
Got it?
Yes, people are.
Good. Okay, so as you do that, we can now have questions to our presenters this day. Maybe I will just invite only a question per person. So we start with John, Noel.
Thank you so much for
you.
The good
Those
presentation.
are 3.
Quite informative.
That's
I've learned
it,
a lot. But I have one question. I did not understand the role of on-farm testing in this whole thing. Can't it address some of the questions like variety by cropping system interactions? If it's done at the appropriate stage, can't we answer most of the questions, including the preferred traits, etc., because it's tested by the farmers under their current systems with the appropriate technology available to them? Thank you.
The question is to who?
My question, I think, is across the disciplines here. from breeders into cropping systems experts? So
maybe I can take a start. I mean, it's a great question, and I think one of the main purposes of on-farm testing is, of course, to get feedback from farmers that can then inform and improve on the product profile. So there's 2 or 3 purposes for on-farm testing. One is to collect data to build a business case to promote a new variety. But another major reason for doing on-farm testing is to see what are the farmers' needs and preferences, and are we meeting those, to get feedback that then can improve the product profiles. And we might discover through on-farm testing that farmers aren't growing the crop the way we thought they were. They're actually growing it in a slightly, they're planting it at a different time than we thought they might plant it, or the management, agronomic management may be different than we thought it was going to be, and that will inform the sorts of trait selection that we talked about in this presentation. So I think on-farm testing can have a very important role, even probably better than asking scientists what should be the traits of the future. We're actually hearing from farmers what need to be the traits of today and the future.
Okay, anyone else wants to add to that, or that's okay? Okay, let's move on to the next question.
Yeah, thank you. For adding my question to the last speaker, just shortly before we broke for lunch, we were for seed system session in room 1. And what has been coming clearly is that we have the seed companies within the seed value chains, and the seed companies multiplying seeds, and then they are the ones distributing to farmers. And in your presentation, you've alluded that there are seeds in the shelves. What I know is that the breeders breed for varieties of the interest of the farmers, and then they forward for multiplication to the seed companies. Now, is this a different scenario in Ghana, that you indicated that the farmers do the multiplication of the seeds? And secondly, how in that scenario do you avoid dilution, where the farmers can dilute with the land races that they are growing? Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. So the community seed system that I used was just an example of an informal seed delivery system. That is not the only approach that is being used in the country. I mean, you have a lot of the seed where the seed companies do not have, the patent right, or they don't have the right over the seed. So they don't really invest so much into the seed. So one way that we are using to actually push the variety, to the farmers, is through the community seed, production. So that is basically what we are trying to, use. But that is what I'm saying. That's not the only one. We have different approach that we carry out, because it is the seed companies actually, they do the multiplication. Because by law, research institution is only supposed to produce foundation, breeder seed. Even for the foundation, it's just the fact that we don't have a lot of private companies within the country. That is why the law allows the research institution to even go into foundation seed. But beyond that, we cannot go into, certified seed production. So we work together with the seed companies in order for them to, scale out the seed that we are producing. But the issue is that you ask yourself, are farmers even willing to buy the seed? Most of the farmers, cannot even afford the seed. So they keep on, recycling the seed. So we thought one approach that we could also use to push the seed, within the value chain, is to try and go through the community seed, production system. But as you have said, it is very true. So the breeders also try to work with them such that there wouldn't be too much kind of maybe infiltration of the seed with other maybe off kind of varieties, just to reduce the quality of the seed. So these are key people that the breeders really trust them so much to do the multiplication. Yeah, thank you. Maybe somebody can add on.
Okay. We are badly off with time, so I'm going to change the original and just only one more question, and that's it. Sorry about that. Yeah.
Okay. So thanks everyone. Okay. All right. Thanks to all the panelists for the excellent presentations. I think I liked the last slide that Matej presented, and I just wanted to find out. There was one bit of the schematic diagram that was talking about if effective, then you scale to other communities. So I'm just curious, in your case, what do you consider as the success factors that you are looking at, and then, you know, against them say that particular delivery system is effective?
Yeah, thank you very much. So we're looking at one, in terms of the reach, the number of farmers, how cost effective it is. So this is what we meant by, I mean, if it is effective. So how many farmers are we able to reach with X amount of dollar? So if we are able to do that, then, I mean, we try, and like I'm saying, so the community seed production is not the only one. We are testing different ones. So you do that, then you try to do the assessment and see which one gives you, I mean, is able to reach out to a lot of farmers at the minimum cost. So if that works, then you can scale it to other communities as well. But you could also have complementary approach. Yeah, so it's not just one kind of delivery system that's cast in stone. Yeah.
Okay, thanks so much. So they are available, they are around. If you have additional questions, please go ahead and have a discussion. For now, let's share the results of the survey.
Yeah, so thank you. So survey result came out. The first question was, what crops do you work on? Many crops people have mentioned, but most vote went to maize and then sorghum. So this is the first question. The second question was, what are the top 5 traits you are working on now? Many traits, more than 20 traits people have mentioned, but top 2 are yield and disease resistance. So these are the top ones. And the third question was, what if anything is limiting your choice of traits? So 64% attendees mentioned resource funding, and 57% mentioned technical capacity, lack of facilities or expertise. So these are the topmost 2. Other than that, multiple breeder priorities, third one. Fourth one, there isn't a limitation. Fifth one, lack of diversity. So these are the top 5. So 64% told resource. Now, after all the presentations, 3 more questions were given. Based on the presentations and discussion, do you think your current trait portfolio needs change? So, just a second. Yes, I will need to change some or all traits. So most of the people have answered this one. And the second question was, if you were considering changing traits, which traits would you add? And the top is heat tolerance. Second one is drought tolerance, and third is yield. So these are the 3 major traits people wanted to add. And the last one was, if you are considering changing traits, which traits would you drop? Plant height, it is the topmost. Other than that, kernel color, intercropping potential, these are the top 3 attendees have mentioned. Although there are 20 more traits people have mentioned here as well, but plant height, kernel color, and intercropping potential, these are the 3 topmost ones. So that's it.
Yeah. I hope we'll get those results, shall we? I think it's very interesting to get those results.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can
Yeah.
share,
Okay, thank you so much. So let's give a round of applause to our excellent presenters. And before the panel comes on, I would like to make an announcement from the Secretariat that after the last plenary we have to go to the auditorium, our poster station across the auditorium. So let's go and view the posters before we go to the hotels. So after this session, we move to the poster session. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that interesting session. And we want to continue the similar session, hopefully equally interesting, considering that was perhaps the main dish, and the next one will be more or less the last meal in the course, or the last item in the course. We'll have a panel discussion, and I invite the panelists to come to the front. I'll mention your names as you come. First is Oswald Ndoro, who is coming to us as a Director of Research and Development at Africa Seed in Zambia. Oswald, please come to the front. And as he comes, I invite also to the panel, to the front, Bruno Gerard. He's a Dean, College of Sustainable Agriculture and Environmental Science within this university where we are. And before joining this university, he has worked at different CG centers, ICRISAT, where he spent 17 years, ILRI 3 years, and 10 years at CIMMYT, mostly working on cropping systems as an agronomist. And then we have Julia Sibier, who is an associate prof at plant breeding, and also acting dean at the moment and head of School of Agriculture, Earth and Environmental Sciences, and also the cluster academic leader of the production sciences. She's working on stage. I also want to invite Maxwell Asante. Maxwell Asante is a principal scientist, mostly on rice breeding, but also deputy director of CSIR Crops Research Institute in Kumasi. Where is Maxwell? Is Maxwell walking onto stage? Oh, there he comes. Right. My good friend Clyde Ujaju, who is the Director of Research Services Department in the Ministry of Lands, Agriculture, Fisheries, Water and Rural Development. It's a huge ministry. In charge of regulatory compliance and quality assurance, analytical services, and plant health research. He is also currently the EASTER International Seed Testing Association executive member and representative for Africa. Do I have all my panelists here? Great, everyone is on board. I would like to remind you that you can still use Slido to submit your questions. So I may not give you a chance at the end, but I'll ask the Slido man to read the questions, and then I'll ask the panelists just in case there are some very burning questions that should be answered. Do you all have mics with you? The microphones, and IT team, I just want to double check with you that the microphones are working, because I'll not sit here, I'll operate next to them. I thought you were bringing the mic to me. Oh. Ready to switch on anywhere? It's not working? I don't see where to switch it on.
This one works, Chris. I was going to say, if you're using Slido, you choose a tab that says Q&A to type in your questions for the panelists.
Thank you. Thanks. All right, and members of the panel, you're welcome. I'd like to just set one quick rule. Please spend just about a minute or two maximum to respond to your questions. And as best as possible, try to avoid repeating points. Give us fresh points that have not been mentioned. If you can make your points up front, if you want to explain, but just give us, first of all, your key points so that we have a take home. And then the rest of the details can follow the key points. And so I'd like to start with Julia. You're the one looking at me, so maybe just as an icebreaker. There have been very good presentations, starting from breeding to agronomy to seed systems. All these pulled together. Anything that you feel like all that was said was good, but something should have been said that was not said that I want to add.
I don't know if it's 1, 2. Okay. Yeah, so what was not said, where do we fit in the graduates that we are training in all this ecosystem? And so I was just thinking about it as a plant breeder educator. And I'm thinking, can we have a graduate that can possess, all skills that, can address these situations? Then my answer was definitely no, that's impossible. But one thing that was coming up was multidisciplinary, that we need the data scientists, we need the physiologists, we need everyone else. We can teach them the basics, the molecular breeding, the phenotyping, and everything. But the most important thing, because technologies are changing, and they're changing very fast, and we probably will end up just leapfrogging to catch up, but we need to train critical thinkers who can use whatever data or whatever to make decisions. I think that's what I'll say for now.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Julia. And that's comments coming from the far south. Correct? Now, Bruno, at the far north, what did you want to add?
Okay, thanks, Chris. First, I think there's a bit of inbreeding in this session because I've been in CIMMYT for 10 years. And I was directing the sustainable intensification program, very much what Wimbai presented. Yeah. All the mechanization, the integrated approach, the multidisciplinarity. So I totally agree with that. I was a bit puzzled by Kevin's comment on saying that breeders are discovering the way farmers are farming only now. and that's something I have to say. When I was I've worked with breeders for 30 years. I joined as a young scientist in West Africa and Niger. And I was always amazed by the breeders, the millet breeders there. And I think there's been a lot of water under the bridge, so it's not a criticism, but they were breeding for many, many years. And none of their seeds were ever stolen by the people working on the stations and having the opportunity. So I think understanding the market, understanding the demand is probably the first thing that breeders should do, or connect to people who can do it properly. I know we have talked about participatory breeding and so on, but I think that's something that's quite vital. The second thing I believe is, and I've been in the CG for 30 years, it's a very competitive space. And I think it's even competitive between programs within the same institute. And I don't think it's very productive. It does not incentivize people to work together. So the way you design projects, the way funders give you opportunities to do research for impact, the way you construct projects is very much on building teams that are not competing to each other and bragging about, I'm better than you are. Breeding is more important than agronomy. Agronomy is more important than breeding. And it will, we'll all go into that type of pea contest. Sorry for the expression. But I think we have to stop that. And we have to build something where we go from the problem and we say, we want to build a house, we need somebody who will just do the blue map, we need people doing the foundation, we need people bringing the walls, doing the electricity, and doing the roof. And I think that's what we have to do when we look at problems of the African agriculture today.
Thank you. In fact, if you were to look at what is more important than the other, it's not agronomy, it's not breeding, I would say it's seed systems. Yeah, because... No, I'm not asking you to fight back. But now, Maxwell, looking at all these dynamics, and if you were to draw linear inequalities and find the unshaded area, tell us, are we getting our priorities right? And if not, what should we do?
Well, I think we should do more. I think policy in the various countries is very important. There must be policy changes that incentivize farmers to use more climate smart approaches. Yeah, and then support for research, mainly from the countries. African governments must learn to put their money where their mouth is. Because we have, the problems are general, but there are nuances in various countries. So, for instance, in Ghana, I'm a rice breeder there. You cannot bring a drought-tolerant variety which is non-aromatic. Nobody will grow it. So we have to use that system. Governments must prioritize research so that indigenous researchers can take care of those nuances.
Okay.
So that once we develop the varieties and all the climate smart technologies, they will be adopted. Yes, but I don't know whether this is the occasion, but I want to disagree a little with Miriam on what she said about breeders saying they are doing the same thing in a faster way. Faster way is genetic gain, especially when it's based on your product profile. So if you're able to use modern technologies, for instance, in my breeding program with the support of EIB, we have converted all our top mega varieties. They are really mega varieties because farmers love and consumers love the taste, the grain quality. But they are susceptible to two major diseases. And with the support of EIB, we have been able to use marker-assisted selection within 2 years to have disease-resistant versions of those varieties. So if a breeder tells you I'm doing the same thing but a faster rate, I think it's a good thing to do.
But actually, she described it as insanity. So breeders are actually insane in this case. You agree or disagree? Anyway, we'll come back to that. But now, breeders want to defend and say they're doing the same thing, they're doing it faster, they've improved the process, but they've not redesigned, I would say, the target in terms of how they get these to the end users. And that makes me wonder, I mean, not Maxwell, but Oswald, what would you like to get done differently for us to be able to prioritize our processes and products so that they end up creating the impacts, particularly impacts in winning the race between climate change and food security. Climates are changing, varieties are being developed, they are doing it faster, they are releasing more varieties, but the cry is those varieties are going to the shelf, and Miriam says, as long as you're doing the same thing the same way, even if you do it faster, they'll still remain on the shelf. You're from the private sector, you probably want to tell us how to get those varieties off the shelf into the hands of the farmers. What do we do differently?
Thank you. First of all, I want to disagree with some speaker who say the varieties are available. They are not.
There's so many disagreements with the previous speakers. I hope you are on the ground, previous speakers. The people disagreeing with you. Go ahead and disagree with them.
From the private sector, we try and acquire varieties from the public sector like CIMET, SIAT, IITA. At the moment, we are trying, but there are no varieties. Within our systems, we have been limited by funding and all that stuff, and we have very few varieties on the shelf at the moment. So more varieties, a challenge to breeders who are here present, more varieties are required. And the major thing that we would require as private sector, it's not about varieties with drought tolerance, faster drought tolerance. Why don't we combine as a challenge? why don't we combine earliness with high yield? I know it's a challenge. When you breed, the earlier, the lower the yield. The longer the season, the higher the yield. So my challenge is, with the pending or the coming climate change, can we have a shorter season variety with higher yields?
So Oswald, if you were to play referee between Maxwell and Miriam, where would you want to cast your vote? Doing the things faster, the same way, or doing things differently? Because you seem to sort of, on one hand, say there are actually very few varieties. On the other hand, she's saying there are varieties, they're being developed, they're faster, but they stay on the shelf. Which is which? Actually, you're actually disagreeing with the idea that there are varieties on the shelf.
Great. This is the time where we want to combine everyone in collaboration, including somebody who talked about market intelligence. I think we need to combine everybody, put ourselves on the same platform, and then develop a variety that is currently high yielding and can face the future in the climate change.
Great. Actually, if I would just paraphrase your comment, go ahead and hand the mic. But I normally say that we sit in different rooms. Software developers are sitting in one room, and hardware developers are sitting on the other room. And the hardware developers hope that the hardware will run without a software. The software developers also develop their software without considering which hardware will run with it. That's the exact scenario of plant breeding and development of seed and products, with the social sciences doing their social science research without a feedback loop into plant breeding. So the two loops have to be complete for the software and the hardware to run together to beat the race between climate change and food security. I want to come back to Bruno. Bruno, you've had long experience in the CG, but now you work in the university. And I'd like you to focus in the university and tell me what you are doing differently in terms of building capacities, especially for the future, because quite a few of the breeders here and the agronomists who made presentations and some of the social scientists who made presentations are supposed to be handing over to others, bright, upcoming students. What is it that you're doing in terms of better targeting of capacities of the future scientists?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. I don't have much experience. I have 2 years experience. So.
Okay. I'll ask Sibia to Julia to compliment, so no worries.
No, and we have the chance to be in a new university where we can think somehow out of the box and trying to solve problems instead of developing, disciplinary type of training. We have to recognize, it's amazing science that we witnessed yesterday, this morning, in terms of, soil microbiome, phenotyping, and so on. So I think our training needs to be twofold. I think we need to train people to be really, really top-notch in their domain, which can be, bioinformatics, can be remote sensing, can be breeding, can be gene editing. But we need also to build and have students who can think first of the problem before developing solutions. And that's what I was always struck by when I was working in the CG, is that people have all the solutions. And the same in universities, people are very monodisciplinary. So they have a solution and try to find problems for the solutions, but it's not the way it should work. So, and building transdisciplinarity in the way we work. So we want to expose students, and we don't have, we have just PhD students right now. We have about 130 PhD students. We'll build a 5 years degree, which will start next September. And it's a very challenging thing, because what are the needs for researchers and workers in agriculture in the future? So, and there's many jobs, in fact, related to that. But in terms of research, I think we really need to develop the skills of people that can integrate problems and also develop the human skills also. Because sometimes scientists don't have much human skills. So they cannot talk, they cannot hear, and they cannot interconnect. And I think that's something that needs to change.
Okay. So, Julia, Bruno's first disclaimer is that he's only 2 years old in the university. You're more than 20 years old in the university, so you probably have been doing the same things over and over, and if I use Miriam's words, maybe doing the same things the same way, hoping that you'll get different results. Is that the case? Or if not, then over these 20 years, can you tell us what you've learned and how you're planning to do things differently from the experience over the 20 years of saying, I think things are different now, we need to do things a little differently from the way we used to do it a decade or two ago?
Yeah, you are right. We can't continue behaving or just taking it as business as usual, as if nothing is happening. We also don't need to really take a complete 180-degree turn and just discard whatever we've been doing and replace it with the new. What I feel is, with experience, we need to modify the way we are doing things and adapt, try to meet the demands of what industry needs, what markets are looking for. And I was just looking at the World Economic Forum. They listed some top skills, like by the year 2025, and I was looking at the list. I just took the top 10 skills from there. The number one skill is analytical thinking and innovation. Active learning and learning strategies, number 2. Complex problem solving, number 3. Critical thinking and analysis, number 4. Creativity, originality and initiative, 5. Leadership and social influence, 6. The only 2 that I mentioned that have technology in them, in that top 10, where you have technology, use monitoring and control, technology design, and programming. But otherwise, you see the top 10 is to do with our critical thinking, problem solving, and so this is what some of the skills that our graduates actually need now, because like I said before, technology is changing and it's changing very fast. So what we need those critical thinkers, those who can solve complex problems. So yes, we are moving. It's not business as usual. We are changing, but we are not making a 180-degree turn. We are modifying, we are adapting, changing the paradigm shift, and looking at what really matters.
What a great answer. Picked some keywords: analytical, critical thinking, problem solving, serious issues here. Clade, you've been so quiet and listening. I hope listening actively and not passively. At some point, Maxwell provoked matters of policy, and I think that's your bread and butter for decades now. For as long as I've known you, you're a man of policy. Tell me, do you think we are getting policies right? Is the policy environment good? If not, what should we change in terms of getting the policy environment right? And of course, with the special focus on getting to win this race between climate change, which is real, unless you doubt, and of course, food security. I would say food security is just a small fraction of it, but food, nutrition, and income security are issues we're all grappling with. Any comments?
Thank you for that question. What I want to say to us is that as a policymaker, even policymakers need to think outside the box. I think that's one thing we need. And because of climate change, if we all agree that there will be frequent droughts, what it means is that the policy should speak to crop diversification to make sure that we minimize the total crop loss and at least be able to promote resilience. The other issue that comes to mind, a lot of people have been preaching about conservation agriculture. The policy should speak to that. But what comes with conservation agriculture sometimes when you talk about minimum tillage and hauling of the land, it's not easy for our old fathers who are now providing the labor force. So what you need with that is the mechanization to assist them in doing that. The other thing that colleagues have been talking about, which I think is critical in the policy, is the issue of climate smart technologies. That we cannot emphasize. We need that badly. And we need also to promote integrated crop management, like integrated pest management. All those are important to make sure that whatever we produce is up to the required standard. But there's one thing that we battled with in my country, which we call a puzzling divergence, where we talk about the researcher yield, or the yield you get in your farms, you researchers versus the farmer yield. And then we discovered that there's a huge gap. And that gap, no one is trying to look into it to say, how can we reduce that gap between the researcher yield potential and the farmer. And we felt that we need to promote a policy that speaks to the research extension interface so that proper messages can get to the farmers. Maybe the last one, which we thought is critical, is also retooling what we call foot soldiers. If extension workers are our foot soldiers, we need to retool them and give them the necessary information, not, of course, as was presented. If they were to sit here, I'm sure they were going to dream something else, because what we saw presented was purely scientific. But we need to make sure that we are able to convert to extension messages that are user-friendly to the farmers. So the policies must speak to that.
Could you add something on policies across countries with regard to variety registration and cataloging? Because I think Eastern and Southern Africa, where you represent, I'm not so sure if that is perfectly running.
That's true, but I was going to speak to that later on. However, because you requested, let me say something. But I don't believe that is 100% the way to go. Yeah. Simply because we have harmonized the SADC, we have harmonized the SCOMESA, we have harmonized this East African Community, and so on and so on.
But you don't believe?
But the implementation is the hurdle. You can have all policies in place, but to say on your marks and let's go is another thing. So I discovered that there is more to just putting the policies in place. And I'm sure private city companies can speak to it. Because sometimes if they don't see the business out of what we have done, they will not move.
Maxwell, how is it running in West Africa, particularly the CORAF, ECOWAS countries? Is it better? I'm told it's highly efficient there in terms of implementation, while the Southern Africa, COMESA, SADC, and others are struggling on this side. What's your secret?
Yes, so yes, a lot of projects are now being run at the regional level through CORAF. Yeah, so it's a good thing that we must continue to do. Yeah, so that's all I can say about that. But I wanted to make a little comment on education as well, because I also help to educate the students. Yeah, so I think we must improve our curriculum and make it much more practical. So students must be introduced to things like developing product profiles, and also they must have, for those who are being trained as breeders especially, I believe they must have practical attachment to breeding programs. They must be embedded in breeding programs to learn. The only little challenge in Africa is that many of the breeding programs are still not able to apply the very modern technology like gene editing and stuff like that. So the students may miss out a bit on that. But being embedded in a breeding program is a very solid way of helping to train the next generation of breeders.
Thank you. I see your emphasis is on getting, if possible, at policy level, compulsory course in agriculture in all universities in Ghana and perhaps ECOWAS. Then everyone will somehow have capacities related to agricultural implementation beyond there. Anyway, I want to get back to Oswald. Oswald, you would see my passion. I put it initially as a joke that I think seed systems is the most important. I could justify that because if you plant fertilizers, they don't germinate. Do fertilizers germinate in the farmer's field? They don't. You have to get seed first to germinate for fertilizers to help unlock the potential. Oh, Bruno says no, fertilizers do germinate. Okay. Now, I'm back to you asking, breeders have made a lot of efforts here in the session that has just ended to convince us that they need to do breeding differently to get varieties developed to beat the race between climate change and food security. How do we best ensure that those varieties end up in the farmers' fields? Because I'm not 100% convinced that every variety that has been developed and released by the public sector is in the farmer's field. Actually, I can prove it using data from different sources that quite a number of varieties that have been released have remained on the shelf. What do we do differently?
Yeah, thank you. You also want to add to Dr. Mjaju's complaint about these varieties, about the yield gap. Besides the yield gap, we also have some varieties that have been dominating the market, can you imagine, for 30 years on the market. So our varietal turnover, our variety cycles are very limited. Now, I am a scientist, but I like to do things the commercial way. Let me do a demonstration very quickly.
Okay.
Right, these are your varieties as researchers. Here they are. We've done all our research, but our challenge is we have these varieties on the shelf. We are a seed company.
Yes, okay.
We are a seed company. Our objective is to get these varieties from research, from SIAT, from CIMET, to the farmers. And we have a serious challenge here. Some of the varieties may not be very good for the farmers. So I am a seed company. I get the varieties. I'm now distributing the varieties through efficient seed distribution systems, where we try and reduce the prices so that it becomes affordable. So I'm distributing the seed.
Okay. Very good.
The objective of any seed company is to make a return to investors by distributing your varieties as breeders. To please put them on so that my varieties have been accepted. Right. So I've done my job. Thank you. I've done my job as a seed company. But because of time, I'm not going to get into details of the challenges that are involved here, where you have your varieties. Now, we have challenges here. These heads, some of them are written F or female. But the farmers there, don't worry, Dr. Spear. The farmers that I have given have not read whether it's female or male. So they just put on the heads. We need you researchers to come and read the small print on your varieties.
Okay.
So that we can together with breeders and as seed companies, we can distribute these varieties to the farmers. I think I've done my job as a seed company, distributing varieties to the farmers. There are many challenges now here where we need other players as well. We need farmer education. At the moment, we are limited to farmer schools training, field days, demonstrations. We do that as seed companies, but we also need other players to come in. The phenotyping guys, please come in and join us in distributing this seed to the farmers. Because of time, I think I have to stop here. I don't have to be a politician.
Thank you. That's interesting. That's very interesting.
Just a moment.
Yeah.
One more thing. You see, when you give room to a marketer or a politician, you're in trouble. You have to push him off the stage. Now, this is a different yet. Yeah. That is, you are designing so that we can fight climate change. This is blue. Thank you very much for designing very good hybrids that can fight climate change. But just designing this hat and keeping it here does not benefit these farmers.
Okay.
These farmers, we need to exchange. You see, typically of our local farmers, that variety is going to be 30 years on the market. So we need to go in, convince him that the blue hat is a new variety that can withstand the climate change conditions. So we need a lot of participation from different players. Thank you. Sorry for taking too long.
I think that's a very interesting illustration. The one person that I would like to ask, you've listed several people that you want to support you to get these varieties to the farmers, but the one person I want to put to task is Clyde, because Clyde's regulation, under-regulation would mean the farmers would probably get the wrong varieties in their hands or the wrong quality of seed of those improved varieties. But over-regulation would also mean that Clyde will limit your efficiency in town and increase your cost of getting these varieties into the hands of the farmers. So I want to put Clyde to task to support you and tell us what he's doing in terms of policy and regulation and ensuring that he's not over-regulating and not under-regulating, and ensuring that his regulatory environment is indeed supporting your approaches to getting the right varieties, the right quality of seed into the hands of the farmers. Clyde.
Thank you so much for that. Maybe before I answer you or before I hide the answer, what I wanted to say again is another potential policy proposal. At least what we are doing now is to follow what we consider as the agroecological tailoring, where we are basically saying the varieties must be distributed according to the agroecologies to make sure that farmers benefit. So that is a policy where I'm coming from. If it's a short season variety, then make sure you distribute it to the right agroecology if it's a long season, like that. So that will help our farmers to really get what they are supposed to get out of that. But coming to your question, I know that what we have been doing in seed system is to make sure, particularly formal, is to make sure that we work together with seed companies and also we give them the right to have private inspectors that can also do inspect on behalf of the company to make sure that they don't really wait for us, but they must be always ahead in terms of what they are doing, in terms of the qualities. And because of that, we've never had problems with seed companies per se, because they are always ahead, and even the qualities they consider as standards, they are normally ahead of the national standards. So we have that rapport between the national seed authorities and the seed companies.
Okay, I want to appreciate the panelists, and I just want you to stay seated for one quick step. I would like to ask if there is any question coming from Slido, if that is so burning. I know there are several questions, but just pick for me one or two burning ones, just one burning one from Slido. And I'm sure it could have been either voted by the team. Check the one that has the highest votes and just let me know. Okay, you can use my mic.
Instead of, this is a question, instead of asking for shorter season, higher yielding ones, why not to medium duration, high yielding one that can be grown in overlapping seasons like maize and PGNP?
So instead of short season, you need to have longer duration, or medium to medium duration, high yielding. Who wants to answer that now? You want to? Okay. Let's get Oswald to respond. I think so.
Thank you very much. With the coming changes in climate, we are very likely to have shorter seasons and very unlikely to have longer seasons. The rainfall is going to be erratic and is going to be unreliable. So within the very short periods that we will get reliable rainfall, I propose that we get short, early varieties that can reach maturity within that short period. It's just a proposal which I think is valid against climate change.
I agree with him, especially when you don't have a yield penalty. So it's possible to select for earliness without losing so much of the yield potential. So we will have to take advantage of it.
Thank you so much, panelists. I think you've done a good job, maybe an even greater job than the presenters. Oh, well, they don't want to say no. Okay. The presenters say no, they also did a good job. Yeah, thank you so much, the presenters, and special thanks to the panelists for making it interactive. We have to stop here and move. I've just been reminded that we need to go to the parallel sessions now. And so I'd not take any more time. We are sort of slightly behind our time schedule, but we've done our best to keep it within time. Thank you so much, and thanks for your good insights on these questions and responses that we received. And thank you so much, listeners, also. Okay, Claire wants to make an announcement before you leave.
Okay. My announcement is really following up on the nominations for the next executive committee. So just take in mind that for anyone to make a nomination, you have to have the privilege of have paid to be a member. So only paid up members can actually nominate the committee. Yeah, thank you. And sorry? I hope everybody got the email address. It was sent to you, to which you can actually send the nominations, and the positions are also shown. So please, paid up members, nominate your committee. And the eyes are still here. If you lost your glasses, please come and pick them. I think it's yours. What do I do? I'm now confused. Okay, so please, just a small thing, a small hitch. If you look on your
Sujimoto from Totori University in Japan. Welcome. The next speaker is Khalid Al-Shama from Ikarda in Egypt. And the next speaker is El Hussein El Mazuri from INRA, Morocco. And then Omar Idrisi, INRA, Morocco. Please, if we can take seats here, I will now leave the floor to the first speaker, Hisashi Sujimoto. And please, we'll keep the time to 10 to 12 minutes so we can have 2 minutes for questions to each speaker. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Elizabeth, for introduction. So my talk today is about this title, long title, Sustaining Wheat Production Through the Development of Climate-Smart Innovative Technology for the Dry and Heat-Prone Agri-Ecosystem of Sudan and Sub-Saharan Africa. This long title is the title of our project that we are now going on. Okay, so as written in the title, this is conducted in Sudan, but this is not only for Sudan, but also the other countries in Africa. Okay, and this is a logo that we are using, we made for this project, and wheat, heat, eat at Africa. And from this logo, this green part is Sudan, but our achievement has already done. We have already sent many materials, and the materials are tested in these countries. The why we are implementing this project is demand. As you know, the demand of wheat is rising, but production is not keeping pace. The gap between supply and demand is growing. And this is the case in Sub-Saharan Africa and also in Sudan. Yeah, this tendency is not only for wheat, but also the other cereals. This report, many negative impact occurred by climate change in Sub-Saharan Africa, mainly. And so we decided to start this project. The main we are mainly the member is from Totori University and Utsunomiya University and Agricultural Research Corporation in Sudan and Sudan Meteorological Authority. Okay, and in this project we settled 5 groups. First one is breeding group to develop wheat line using modern technology. And second is a quality, enhance the nutritional value and end-use quality. And third is a physiology to clarify the mechanism behind heat stress tolerance. And fourth is a climate change, develop future climate scenarios and technologies. And final fifth is capacity building, strengthening the researchers and farmers and research capacity. Okay, so now in this my presentation, I will briefly introduce what we are doing in these 5 groups. Okay, first, breeding group. Okay, we developed many interesting and very novel lines with wild germplasm and evaluate these many materials in heat and drought stress condition in Sudan. And how to make this very unique material we are presented tomorrow by Dr. Yasio, morning room 2. Okay, and in Wadamedani, Sudan, this place is an irrigated area, and we made a plot for less water condition and well water condition. And they compare the materials like this. And depending on the genotype, the sensitivity is very different. And same time, these materials were genotyped by genome-wide molecular markers. And comparing the molecular markers and the phenotyping and genotyping information, we analyze the QTL, or marker acid selection, on these chromosomes. Especially the gene or QTLs on some chromosomes are very significant. These would be very useful for breeding for heat and drought stress tolerance. And the result has been already reported in this conference today morning. Okay. And second group of this project is a quality, in which quality is a bread making quality and nutritional value. Okay. And like this picture, the first one is optimum condition. This is a heat condition. This is a heat and drought condition. Okay. And for example, Nori 61, Imam is a practical variety, and under the stress condition, the seed become very shriveled and very small, become very small. But for example, the MSD 187 keep the size of the seed. Okay, so we are using these phenotype and conducted the GWAS molecular analysis, and we found the very clear marker trait association on chromosome 5D, but the several marker trait association are shown in several chromosomes on D genome under heat and drought combined condition. And these results have been already published in International Journal of Molecular Science or Agronomy. Okay, and third group, the physiology. We want to know the mechanism behind tolerance. And we selected several materials as N61, MSD 53, and 345. Both 53 and 345 are selected as drought stress tolerance. And we conducted a dry down experiment, and we found that both 53 and 345 show the different response to the dry stress. Okay, and also we isolated metabolite from the flag leaf and analyzed. Left 4 lines are the metabolite under control condition, and right 4 metabolite appear in stress condition. And interestingly, for example, the most left one, this is MSD 345. This one is produce a very strange metabolite that as putrescine or something that has not been reported appeared in under drought stress conditions. So this means that there is a novel mechanism for drought stress tolerance that has not been discovered. Okay, the fourth group is a climate change group. Okay? We installed several weather stations in Sudan, just mid of the field, okay? And monitored the canopy temperature and inside temperature and atmosphere temperature. And surprisingly, that we found that above and inside canopy temperature are various, different in a different variety. Yes, and at the same time, we are now in collaboration with the Sudan Meteorological Authority. We are making this kind of map, downscaling of meteorological data in Sudan. This is a temperature, average temperature, maximum and maximum temperature in wheat growing season. And using these information, we are trying to do a yield forecast. And this has been already published in many papers, including Nature Food. Okay, this is a human capacity building for sustained activities. This is very important, and we are invited long and short-term trainees from Sudan, and 7 persons has been already, 7 persons took the PhD, and these persons will be a leader to conduct our project. And also we invite four short-term trainees. Okay. And we are now constructing a molecular breeding facility. Not yet done, but this is a completion view. We are now constructing. Okay, and this is another human capacity building for sustaining activities. We are implementing innovation platform, IP, and in this innovation platform, we are training workshop and technical visit. Workshop for farmers, workshop for extension workers, and we visit field to install, to transfer the technologies. Okay, for this training, we made many materials, so please go to this QR code to access our materials. Okay, and as discussed in previous sessions, the seed is very important. So we produce many pure basic seed in our project, and the achievement will be reported in tomorrow by Dr. Iza Tahil, morning session, room 1. Okay, so we started breeding program utilizing our original germplasm using a speed breeding and marker selection. Okay, this is a final slide. These are the members that we are conducting this project, and this project is supported by Japan Science Technology Agency and Japan International Cooperation Agency, and conducted in Tottori University, Sudan, ARC, Sudan, and Sudan Meteorological Authority. Okay, thank you very much.
So next, I will call upon our next presenter, who is Khaled. Zach is standing in for Khaled. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. So I will be presenting to you this work we have been doing at ICARDA and across some CG centers. We call it QBMS because we have developed a technology and a package that can access BMS, which is the breeding management system that we're using. So it's really querying the database. Through the whole conference, we have been looking, hearing field trials, GWAS, QTL, etc. And all this is still at kind of amateur level because we have different Excel files with different versions. We don't have a good adoption of databases. And when we have a good adoption of databases, we don't have tools to access without going from the task of downloading the data. The minute you download the data, you have different versions, and it becomes difficult to follow it. So yeah, you could have got a good presentation by Khalid, but he's not here, so you're a little bit stuck with me for the next 10 minutes. Anyway, so the first thing, we all start with the data. You cannot take any decision without the data. We want to build data-driven breeding programs. I can tell you a lot of friends here or colleagues, they will be mad at me, but I have seen through my experience that a lot of breeders are doing two analyses. One analysis very quick by eyes or in Excel to select, and one a good analysis to publish a paper. Forgetting that the objective of breeding is really to select, which means reducing false positive, which are those materials that we select and they are not actually good and they are not potential. And more seriously, not selecting a germplasm that is really actually very good in performance and adaptation. So we need to integrate data because we look at soil, markers, phenotypes, so all this data is sitting somewhere and we need to connect it. We have a lot of data silos and what kind of information we want to gain by integrating all the data. So this is not global and it's not taking into account a lot of other things, but the minute we start designing a breeding program or cross, we are accumulating data and information that we are using it in a proper way while in its database or using it just by knowing it. So when we plan, we look at populations, pedigrees, parent, crossing blocks, seed lots as well. So that generates a lot of information. We plan a trial environment, why that trial. We are using different environments for what, so we are having meta information on those. We design an experiment, we measure in the field or in a glass house or controlled environment. We do quality control. We need to look at the data before we took it back to the machine for analysis and taking decision. And then we analyze and we report. That means this needs to be fast to not let breeders select based on Excel and then when they have time to do proper analysis for publication. So let me just tell you one thing. Most of the time when we do any experiment, that means we look at non-exact science. We do biology, breeding, we just use the data that we generate from one experiment, and then we throw the data. However, if I give you this example of just typical breeding program, where in first year we do preliminary trial, few environment, more genotypes, and then we select some of them, let's say 25%, then we have intermediary, we have more environment, and then we select 50 of those, doing a pressure of, I don't know, 25%, we have more environment. So when we go, for example, to year 3, if I want to analyze the advanced year trial, I'm just using 50 genotypes in 10 environments. However, those 50 genotypes, I have information on them the previous 3 years, and I'm losing that information. I have an information on them on another 8 environments, and I'm losing this information. I may have more information on them if I integrate pedigree information system or genomic information system, and I can use all this data to take decision on my advanced year trial in year 3. That's easy to say, very, very complicated to do the minute you are trying to have a really decision-making breeding program. So, because what we are doing, most of the time we look at the first 2, we do descriptive analysis. I can tell you what happened with my field in Morocco or in Sudan. We go a little bit, we push our technology to do diagnostic analysis, which is, I can tell you why this genotype is good, and then we stop. We do some genomic prediction, but I still see genomic prediction sitting in diagnostic analysis because we don't use it in the way routinely that we need to use it. So we need to do predictive analytic to tell you what's likely to happen in the future. Predicting, that's what we are doing. But the most importantly, to be in a framework of breeding, data-driven breeding program, is we need to do prospective analytic. That means I can tell you what I should change to make something happen or to do it better or cheaper. Okay, so that means we need a system where we need to take data and turn it into dashboard for the manager or leader to take a decision. So that's why we are talking about reproducibility. We have data. If it's not sitting in the database, it's very, very hard to control what's happening with the version. I find an outlier, I change it, and then I have another file, and I end up having in my laptop 20 versions of the same data. I don't know what to report. If somebody wants it, or I retire, or I change job, it's very difficult to capture those versions. And you need those automatism and analytic pipeline to really look and say, I have a modern breeding program. So this is mainly what we are talking. We start this work I will go back to the system or the tool itself, but this is what we are doing. We have different databases. In this case, we look at BMS. We start with BMS, and now we are trying to adopt enterprise breeding system. We call it, I think, ABS, but it's the same thing. It doesn't matter. The minute you have an online database that it's accepting API are those languages that link you to the database, you link everything. So I have the data in ABS, or breed base, or cassava base, BMS in this case. We have our genotyping platform or genotypic management system. For our case, it's GIGWA. It can be breed base as well. And with those calls, we can just fetch the data without downloading the data. This is very important because we are talking here about analytics. So all those analytics can be almost semi-automatic. And we can give a decision to the breeders very, very easily because we don't have this issue of going to the breeders and knocking their doors every day to get the data because it's not ready, etc. We can integrate information such as markers and pedigree. And yeah, we can do predictions. But what's important in the system is you can also, we'll see that do dashboards. Like a manager can come and see how many trials do have, which one did not work, which one have bad heritability, which one they are correlated environment that maybe we don't need to use all the time because they don't bring extra information. So while you do that, that means you can respond easily to the, and fast to the request from breeding, and you have a semi-automatic pipeline, and you don't have a lot of client interference. You don't have that, I'm analyzing, well, the analysis told me the genotype is not good. Why actually I know it's good? Well, the data is saying it's not good. Something like that. You don't have that personal judgment that you cannot have if you are constructing a data-driven breeding program. So this is what it's doing. This package is actually was online in a year. It was downloaded by more than 7,000 people using it. So more platforms we add. So we started by BMS. We added GIGWA. We add breed base, cassava base, all the crop base technologies. Once we have all the APIs and the technology present, for example, in EBS, that will be linked to EBS. So the end use, as I said, breeders. So it's a really, you don't have different versions of the data. That's very helpful. You can query, retrieve the data, report it, do the quality control, and you can have dashboards, and that's really helpful in breeding modernization. So this is the link. You look at it. You have examples from different platforms. You can also get the climate for your trial, very easy. So you can link and try to look at climatic variables that drive G by E, for example, if you want to look at that. And there are examples for people that are not familiar with programming, but this system allows you as well to do kind of graphical user interfaces that can help people that they are not really developers or IT people to be able to use the system and use the analytics of it. So I think I'm just telling you people that they are using it. Several breeding applications are actually now using it, including I think Mr. Bean, you know it, was developed in SIAT. We have some BRAPI connectors, some work done in Cornell, and we are working with all CG programs to have this, link to the ABS development under breeding research initiative. And I think the chair is up. I need to stop, and I thank you.
Thank you, Zach. Our next speaker is El Hussein. Welcome, please.
Thanks, Madam Chairwoman. Dear audience, I hope you are still bearing with us. It's a long day. We have a few minutes to go. Just bear with us for these last minutes. My presentation will concern cereal variety locally bred in Morocco versus those imported and registered in Morocco but imported from Europe. How do they perform under semi-arid conditions of the Sharia region but under field conditions? So this work has been conducted in Morocco. As an introduction, small grain cereals, as you may know, soft wheat, durum wheat, and barley are mainly grown in the drought-prone areas of Morocco and North Africa. And also, as I heard now, in Sudan and other areas. To increase crop yield per unit of scarce water in these areas, both are better cultivars and better agronomic managements are needed. The challenge is to do better management of the crop or improve its genetic makeup to capture more of the water supply for use in transpiration, more efficiently exchange transpired water for CO2, to produce biomass and convert most of it to grain or harvestable products. According to Pasfiora, who had quite a deal of experiences and publications in these areas, the upper limit of water productivity in the open field of well-managed, disease-free, and water-limited cereal crops is generally about 20 kilograms of grain per hectare per millimeter of water used. However, in the farmers' fields and the rain-fed conditions of Morocco, productivity is significantly lower than that because of many other factors, like undernutrition of crops, irrational soil preparation and seedbed preparation, unsuitable date and doses of sowing, weed control and diseases, and so on. Under these conditions, evaluating the performance of new varieties as if they will perform on farmers' fields will be different from those obtained in the stations. And we are interested to see what might be the yield gaps and the performance of this introduced varieties from they are imported and the ones which are created in Morocco. So our objective is to evaluate in the first place the performance of small grain cereals, cultivars under the climatic conditions of 3 contrasting years and 3 contrasting areas in farmers' fields. In the main cereal producing area of Morocco, which is Shawia, near Casablanca. To compare in second place the performance of INRA registered varieties, which are the local bred ones, with imported registered varieties that are imported by the seed companies to avoid some seed multiplication problems. So all these will be compared to the farmer's practice in the field. The methodology adopted is for the 3 species. We had 5 varieties, some of them imported, some of them are locally bred, and we installed them on 12 farmers' fields in the Shawia plain. Trials were installed for each variety about 1/4 of hectare to have whole field conditions, farmers' conditions. A multi-site complete randomized block design with 6 treatments per species and 4 applications were applied. From each elementary plot, we got random samples for the agronomic data collections, and we proceeded with analysis of variance with 4 treatments with multi-factors, treatments, blocks, sites, zones, and etc. The least significant difference was applied in case there is a difference. The varieties we used, they are here. For soft wheat, Rehan, Khadija, and Kharuba, INRA bred ones. and the Bandera Faiza imported ones. For durum wheat, Nasheed, Faraj, Karim, INRA bred ones versus Kanakis and Bonidero. And for barley, Usama, Amira, Aksad, Amalu, we had four varieties INRA bred ones versus Nazah, which is imported. For all the three species, we had local checks with the varieties they use. Most of them, they use old varieties. The seeds used are all certified seeds and conducted under the recommended research management crops. And in the other hand, the farmer kept his management. So over the 3 years, we had the 3 cropping seasons, we had these experiments. The year 22-21 was favorable, so we had the best yields for all varieties, the soft wheat varieties. And the last year, which is 2021, 2022, had the severe drought, we had the lowest yields. Under these conditions, the average yields for these 12 sites was we had Kharoba, Khadija, and the Rihan, Hessian fly resistant varieties and disease resistant varieties, which are locally bred, performed much better than Bandera Faiza, who obtained the second highest yield. And the local farmers had the lowest yields. So we had the highest biological yield, highest grain yield, and the highest harvest indices. For the 3 zones, the favorable rainfed area produced the highest yields in the average, followed by the intermediary rainfed, and the lowest yields were obtained for unfavorable rainfed. Consistently, for the 3 areas, we had the INRA bred varieties. In the first place, Kharoba, followed by Rihan and Khadija, which produced the highest biological yield, grain yield, and they had the highest harvest index indices. That means highest harvest indices means more drought tolerant, as what was demonstrated before. The lowest yields were obtained by the farmers using their own techniques. The second ranked years were the ones obtained from the varieties, imported varieties. Similarly, for durum wheat, the highest yields were obtained for the favorable year and the lowest one for the extremely dry year. And for the durum, we had Faraj, Karim, and Nasheed. Faraj is quite new variety, Hessian fly resistant. Nasheed, tolerant to Hessian fly, and Karim, quite old variety. And all of them gave the highest yields, higher yields, and for grain and biological, and highest in the harvest indices compared to Bonidero and Kanakis, who are imported. The local control has the lowest values for all these parameters. For durum, consistently also, we found that for the favorable area, we had Nasheed and Faraj who gave the best yields. In the intermediary rain-fed area, we had Faraj, Karim, and Nasheed. And for the unfavorable area, we had also Faraj, Karim, and Nasheed, and the imported varieties ranked in the second places. For the barley varieties, we had similarly the same yields for the 3 years, with Amira, Aksad, Usama, who yielded the highest yields, and the favorable areas gave the best yields, and consistently these 3 varieties yielded more than the other ones. The yield gaps were the highest yield gaps under favorable areas and the favorable years were higher for the local bred varieties, either for soft wheat, secondly by the imported ones, with the dark line at the bottom, which is farmers' yields. Similarly, for durum wheat, the highest yield gaps were obtained for durum, followed by the imported ones. Similarly, for barley, the exception here that one variety performed well over all the areas, and we conclude that the INRA created varieties produced the highest yields under the highly variable environments, rainfall conditions. They also yielded the imported registered varieties and those practiced by farmers. That for the 3 species, the highest yield gaps registered between improved cereal varieties and local farmers were obtained by the INRA-created varieties. The highest yield gaps were obtained for durum wheat cultivars, followed by the bread wheat cultivars, and finally by the barley cultivars. What is the main message here? That the most available seed are the imported varieties rather than the local ones. This is a message that we have to keep the buildup we accumulate through time with locally bred varieties to improve better and to challenge the climate change and the droughts we have, rather than easily importing and multiplying the seed and made it available. So here's some data that prove that we should look again at our strategy of seed improvement, seed multiplication, and varietal valorization at the national level. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much, Hussein. And our last but not least speaker of the day is Omar. Please welcome.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm pleased to be here with you today, and this is the last presentation. I know we are all tired. I will try to keep it as short as possible, but yeah. I'm here, I'm trying to share with you some of our results when we are trying to implement a speed breeding method, a simple one, cost-effective one, into our food legumes breeding. And I will try to show that it could be applied mostly especially for small-scale breeding programs, especially in developing countries, Africa, for instance. Here I'm trying to give some short overview on the importance of food legumes worldwide, and say something about what is the small-scale breeding programs, especially food legumes one, what are the main characteristics of those programs. Then I will just to introduce a few information about some examples on the use of speed breeding in food legumes worldwide, and try to answer the question how to enhance the efficiency of small-scale breeding programs in terms of higher genetic diversity within the breeding pipelines and improved genetic gain, and try to come up with some take-home message. As we all know, pulses or grain legumes are important crops for sustainable farming thanks to their ability to fix nitrogen in soils. I think I will not take a lot of time in this information, as many other presentations talked about that. They are important as staple foods. Their grains are rich in iron, zinc, proteins, and they have many other benefits, let's say, at different levels. They contribute also to achieve at least 3 of the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. Sorry. Here some statistics about the production of food legumes in the world. As we can see here, I take the 2 examples of lentil and chickpea because what I am about to present concerns more lentil and chickpea. In Africa, for example, Ethiopia and Morocco are the 2 major producers of chickpea and lentils. For chickpea, we can find also Tanzania as one of the major producers. Now, despite, or unfortunately, I should say, unfortunately, despite the importance of food legumes for sustainable farming, food security, and other important points, They are in, let's say, bad situation in many countries, especially in our countries in Africa. They are considered, let's say, as less important crops when we compare with cereals, maybe for their the lower area that they are covering, or also the profitability that they are that the farmer takes from these crops. Those crops are being grown mainly by smallholders farmers, and there is a common point, which is there is a limited involvement of private sector and limited resources in terms of funds, breeders, and technicians are dedicated to these crops. And most of times, the breeding programs dealing with these crops are rather small-scale programs in terms of the size of genetic material they are available for breeders, resource available, and resources in terms of funds or human resources also. Among the most popular breeding methods being used by breeders for these crops, mainly lentil, chickpea, especially, we can find the bulk method, the pedigree method, pure line selection in theory, let's say. But as I'm showing here, most of breeding programs rely, in my opinion, much or too much on the introduction of materials from outside, and only limited crosses and own crosses are being undertaken, and the step after crossing, the advancement of segregating materials is being undertaken, but just in very limited, let's say, in very limited points. I'm not saying here that international nurseries and international germplasm is not good. It is an important source of variability for this kind of breeding programs, but relying only on this genetic material makes the genetic variability available for breeder limited. And sometimes, and most of times, let's say, only limited numbers of promising advanced lines comes from the own crossing blocks that were designed for really specific objective of the country to respond to the real need of a specific farmer of that country. Besides that, and in addition to these weaknesses and limits, this is a common situation for all conventional breeding programs. This is a time and resource consuming process, especially for the part dealing with line development. It takes more than 6 years in the more optimistic scenario. And then the other parts of yield testing, farm trials, and variety release, in addition to registration trials, seed multiplication trials, it's time-consuming, and constraints and challenges are keeping changing, especially in the context of climate change. Here, this is why we need a speed breeding program to try to speed up the process and reduce the time needed to develop a variety and respond to farmers' demand. Our objective here is to develop a simple and resource-efficient speed breeding method, easy to implement in small-scale food legume breeding programs in order to enhance the genetic gain. What we need to have as the main characteristic of this speed breeding method is it should be a simple setup as possible. Basically, we need LED lamps or tubes that we could find in the market, providing that these light sources gives photosynthetically active radiations. We need also switch time, air conditioner, and some seeding trials. The existing literature on the speed breeding based on the application of extended photo period have studied some food legumes, especially chickpea. This is the starting point of our study. We tried to optimize these parameters within a PhD study, and there is a poster exhibited in this conference for further detail. We worked on photoperiod duration optimization, red to blue light ratio optimization, light intensity, and the recommended, let's say, the recommended photoperiod duration up to now is, I think, 22 hours of light. We could get it less with 18 hours light. We got same results without stress on our plants, especially for lentils. The other interest of the suggested speed breeding protocol is enhancing the genetic gain, as you can see here, based on the breeder's equation. The lower the genetic interval is, the higher the genetic gain will be. What we are doing basically in our program is we start from a single plant F1 obtained from a single cross for the targeted threats. Then we self-pollinate the F1 and get the F2 population, which is the starting point of our simple speed breeding program. From the F2 population that are being planted at high density in simple seeding tries, with the density of more than 150 single plants per, let's say, 0.8 meters square. We speed up the growing cycle of the plant, and we could realize a cycle of 60 days after sowing to get the mature seed and go to the next generation, F3, F4, and F5, using single seed descent as a breeding method to advance generations. Here, as you can see, the line development step of the breeding programs that takes more than 7 years in the conventional breeding programs, we could reduce it to at least 2 years in our suggested speed breeding techniques using this extended photo period. Then, after obtaining the F6 populations, which are basically homozygous and homogeneous lines, the field path start and the screening for the targeted threats will start. Here is just an example of what we could obtain as a genetic gain or selection differential between two generations. For an example of seed size in lentil, using image analysis to measure the seed area, giving an idea about the seed size. I'm about to end. We could see in the table here that we can get higher genetic gain when we use this speed breeding method compared to the greenhouse that we used to rely on. Another important point is using this simple speed breeding method, in a growth chamber of, let's say, 10 meters square, you can grow up to 16 populations that could be derived from 16 cross combinations, and then obtain in 1 year more than 2,400 F6 fixed lines to be introduced to the yield trials. This is a way to enhance the diversity in the breeding pipeline and start the screening in the observation nurseries and yield trials in a large enough populations, in addition, of course, to the international germplasm introduced from the international centers such as ICARA. Here, an example of of real F7 populations that we have really obtained from this simple speed breeding method that we grow this year in the field. I'm about to finish. Here, there is a possibility also to undertake some early generation selection for some traits. I'm giving here the example of yellow cotyledon color in lentil, an important trait that is being preferred by consumers and farmers in Morocco. Another important point is we could develop rapidly mapping populations, especially recombinant hybrid populations for inheritance and genetic studies. And my take-home message is that the suggested speed breeding protocol could contribute to enhance genetic gain and enrich genetic diversity within the food legume breeding pipelines, allowing rapid development of new varieties corresponding to farmers and consumer demand. And it should be pointed out that the suggested method is simple, cost-effective, and could be in-house built with limited resources, especially for small-scale breeding programs. As the dinner is approaching, I would like to thank you with this traditional Moroccan dish. I hope you will have the opportunity to taste it. Thank you very much, and sorry for being late.
Thank you very much. Let's give a round of applause to the speakers because they stuck to time. And let's thank ourselves for sticking up to this late. And I want to apologize for the late session because of the program that we do have. So I have time for one question to each of the presenters. And the floor is open now. Oh, there is one question here. There, where the camera is now.
All right, thank you very much for the nice presentation. Yeah, my question goes to the speed breeding presenter. And I would like to know by how many days were you able to reduce the days to flowering from the conventional way of growing your plants?
This is my, okay. Yeah, for lentil and chickpea, it takes in field conditions, the cycle takes in Morocco here more than 5.5 months. For the speed breeding methods that we are using, every 60 days we can harvest mature seed to go to the next generation. That's the situation. In this way, we can make the 6th generation to fix the lines and obtain the F6 material to go to the field in 1 year. If you don't take your vacation, if you take your vacation, you can make it in 1 year and some. Yeah.
Thank you. There is one question from that corner. Michael?
Who?
And then the next one is from here.
I have a question to Dr. Tsujimoto in Sudan. In light of what we see in Sudan now, do you still think it's the best strategy to invest in building up capacity, high sophisticated technologies in a country like Sudan?
Yeah, why not? Yeah. Yeah, so yes, it's very difficult. But now we can communicate using internet. Yes, and fortunately, the situation of watermelon is much better than, good compared to Khartoum. So we don't have many difficulties. But the question, one difficulty is that we can't send our seed, and we can't receive their seed to Japan because of the stop of the transportation. This is the biggest issue that we are facing. For the construction, yeah, slowed down, but yeah, possible, yeah, going on, no problem.
Okay, thank you. Our next question and last question, there at the top. Yeah, please go ahead.
Thanks, Zach. The question is directly to you. So, in the EBS or the BMS in general, how we are coming together to have a unified and rapid database-based system of analysis for the breeders? You know, is there any software that is right away integrated with the EBS that we can utilize? And if there is any update, just update us for the audience. Thank you.
Yeah, easy question. I cannot answer you. I'm not responsible of EBS. I think it's going in the right direction. You are adopting EBS in wheat, and whatever you do in connecting databases, that will be available in EBS as well, and in genomic information systems. So there are teams that they are finalizing pipeline across all CG centers. There are teams that adopting EBS across EBS for phenotypic, but also genotypic data. And at the end, we're aiming all to have one system for an easy decision making. So what I presented is really the work we did at ICARDA for BMS and GIGWA and others, which will be, I assume, something similar, plus some analytical tools in EBS. So that's really the aim. And that's why, we are pushing for all these things.
Yeah, thank you. Please.
Hello, my name is Jacob van Etten. I work for the Alliance. I have also a question about QBMS. Very interesting presentation. How do you approach capacity building? Right? You make new R packages, but people need to learn about it. What kind of resources are available? How do people get access to perhaps courses about it? How, if you're starting even with R, how do you learn about QBMS? That's what I'm curious about.
Yeah, thanks. That's very interesting. I think what's important first is that the opportunity we have in one CG, of course, is that we work together. So we used before to have, I know CIAT, you have people doing packages, CIMIT as well. We start sitting together to not develop 3 packages, but only one. So that's done. Second thing is that we have 2 aspects. We have aspects of analysis that some experts will use, but we need to give tools to non-experts to use that. I think for a long time in our capacity development is that we use a lot of energy and the resources to take breeders from all around the planet and teach them how to code. And you use some coding programming that you are happy to use. You go back to your home, you don't use it, you forget it. So now it's a different approach where you deliver tools for different users, mainly 2 categories. Yeah, that's what
Yeah, just to add to the question to Tadesse and Van Etten, I think Khaled is not here this week because he's working on, together with other team members, on a semi-automated analytical pipeline for the CGA and the NARES networks that will work with the EBS as well as other breed-based BMS, at the moment database agnostic. And I think that there is a plan for capacity development on all areas, not just on using these tools that we are developing on all areas of the breeding process. We're still working on this. We're putting together curricula, and hopefully this should be rolled out at some time in future. So with that, I want to thank our presenters very much. And thank you all, and we'll close the program here, and hopefully we can catch buses and go wherever we need to sleep. Thank you. Thank you. I am Dorcas. I was standing out for Elizabeth. I am not Elizabeth.